The Pinka Fairy Tale by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, there was a queen to whom God had not granted children. Every morning, she would go into the garden and pray to God in heaven to bless her with a son or daughter. One day, an angel from heaven appeared to her and said, "Be at ease. You shall have a son endowed with the power of wishing. Whatever he desires in the world, he shall have." Delighted, she went to the king and shared the joyful news. When the time came, she gave birth to a son, filling the king's heart with joy. Every morning, she would take the child to the garden where wild beasts were kept and bathe in a clear stream. One day, when the child was a bit older, he lay in her arms and she fell asleep. At that moment, the old cook, aware of the child's wishing power, seized him. He slaughtered a hen, sprinkling its blood on the queen's apron and dress. Then he secretly took the child to a hidden place where a nurse was compelled to care for him. The cook ran to the king and accused the queen of allowing wild beasts to snatch away her child. Seeing the blood on her apron, the king, consumed by rage, ordered a tall tower built. In it, neither sun nor moon could be seen. He confined his wife there, sealing her in. For 7 years, she was to stay without food or drink, left to die of hunger. But God sent 2 angels from heaven in the form of white doves. Twice a day, they brought her food until the 7 years passed. The cook, fearing the child's wishing power, left the palace and approached the boy, who was old enough to speak. He said to him, "Wish for a magnificent palace with gardens and everything that belongs to it." Before the boy finished speaking, everything he wished for appeared. After some time, the cook said to him, "It's not good for you to be alone. Wish for a pretty girl as a companion." The king's son made the wish, and instantly a girl stood before him, more beautiful than any painter could depict. The two played together, deeply in love, while the old cook hunted like a nobleman. But the cook feared that one day the king's son might wish to be with his father, endangering him. He took the maiden aside and said, "Tonight, when the boy is asleep, go to his bed and plunge this knife into his heart. Bring me his heart and tongue. If you fail, you will lose your life." He left, returning the next day to find she had not carried out the deed. She said, "Why should I shed the blood of an innocent boy who has harmed no one?" The cook threatened, "If you don't do it, it will cost you your life." After he left, she had a little deer brought to her, killed it, took its heart and tongue, and placed them on a plate. When she saw the old man coming, she told the boy, "Lie down in your bed and cover yourself." The wicked man entered and demanded, "Where are the boy's heart and tongue?" The girl handed him the plate, but the king's son threw off the covers and declared, "You old sinner, why did you want to kill me? Now I will pronounce your sentence. You shall become a black poodle with a gold collar around your neck. You will eat burning coals until flames burst from your throat." As he spoke, the old man transformed into a poodle with a gold collar, and the cooks were ordered to bring live coals, which he devoured until flames erupted from his throat. The king's son stayed a while longer, thinking of his mother and wondering if she was still alive. Finally, he said to the maiden, "I will return to my own country. If you come with me, I will care for you." "Ah," she replied, "the journey is long, and what will I do in a strange land where I am unknown?" Since she seemed hesitant and they could not bear to part, he wished her to be transformed into a beautiful pink flower and took her with him. He then journeyed back to his homeland, with the poodle following him. He arrived at the tower where his mother was imprisoned, wishing for a ladder that reached the top. Then he ascended and looked inside, calling out, "Beloved mother, Lady Queen, are you still alive, or are you dead?" She replied, "I have just eaten and am still satisfied," thinking the angels were present. He said, "I am your dear son, whom wild beasts were said to have torn from your arms, but I am alive and will quickly rescue you." He descended again, went to his father, and presented himself as a stranger huntsman, asking for a position. The king agreed, saying if he proved skillful in hunting, he would be welcome, though deer had never roamed the area. The huntsman pledged to provide as much game as the king's table could handle. He gathered all the huntsmen, led them into the forest, and arranged them in a large circle, with himself stationed at the open end, and began to wish. Over 200 deer immediately rushed into the circle, and the huntsman shot them. 60 country carts carried the game home to the king, who for the first time in years adorned his table with game. The king was overjoyed and commanded his entire household to dine with him the next day, hosting a grand feast. As they gathered, he told the huntsman, "You are so clever. You shall sit beside me." The huntsman declined, saying, "Lord King, forgive me. I am just a poor huntsman." But the king insisted until he agreed. While seated, he thought of his beloved mother and wished that one of the king's chief servants would speak of her and inquire about the queen's well-being in the tower, whether she was alive or had perished. Almost immediately, the marshal spoke up. "Your Majesty, we live joyfully here, but how is the queen faring in the tower? Is she still alive, or has she died?" The king replied, "She allowed my dear son to be torn apart by wild beasts. I will not have her name mentioned." Then the huntsman stood and said, "Gracious Lord Father, she is still alive, and I am her son. I was not taken by wild beasts, but by that villain, the old cook, who stole me from her arms while she slept and stained her apron with chicken blood." He then pointed to the dog with the golden collar and declared, "That is the villain." Live coals were brought forward, which the dog was forced to devour until flames erupted from its throat. Seeing this, the huntsman asked the king if he wished to see the dog in his true form and transformed him back into the cook, who stood before them with his white apron and knife. Enraged, the king ordered him cast into the deepest dungeon. The huntsman continued, "Father, would you like to see the maiden who raised me so tenderly and was later ordered to kill me, though her own life hung in the balance?" The king agreed, saying, "Yes, I wish to see her." The son said, "Most gracious father, I will show her to you as a beautiful flower." He reached into his pocket and brought out the pink flower, placing it on the royal table. It was so exquisite that the king had never seen its equal. Then the son said, "Now I will show her to you in her true form," and wished for her to transform into a maiden. She appeared, radiantly beautiful, more so than any painter could capture. The king sent 2 waiting maids and attendants to the tower to bring the queen to the royal table. When she arrived, she ate nothing and declared, "The gracious and merciful God who sustained me in the tower will soon deliver me." She lived for 3 more days, passing away peacefully. At her burial, the 2 white doves that had brought her food to the tower, angels from heaven, followed her body and perched upon her grave. The aged king ordered the cook to be torn into 4 pieces, but grief consumed his own heart, and he soon passed away. His son married the beautiful maiden, whom he had carried as a flower in his pocket. Whether they still live today is known only to God. Clever Grethel? A fairy tale by the brothers Grimm. There was once a cook named Grethel, who wore shoes with red rosettes, and when she walked out in them, she turned this way and that and thought, "You are indeed a pretty girl." When she came home, she drank a draught of wine in her gladness of heart, and as wine excites the desire to eat, she tasted the best of whatever she was cooking until she was satisfied, saying, "The cook must know how the food tastes." It happened that one day her master said to her, "Grethel, there is a guest coming this evening. Prepare 2 fowls very daintily for me." "I will do it, master," answered Grethel. She killed 2 fowls, scalded and plucked them, put them on the spit, and towards evening placed them before the fire to roast. The fowls began to brown and were almost ready, but the guest had not yet arrived. Then Grethel called out to her master, "If the guest does not come, I must take the fowls away from the fire, but it would be a pity and a shame if they are not eaten immediately while they are at their juiciest." The master said, "I will go myself and fetch the guest." When the master had turned his back, Grethel laid the spit with the fowls aside and thought, "Standing by the fire so long makes one hot and thirsty. Who knows when they will come? In the meantime, I will run into the cellar and have a drink." She ran downstairs, set a jug, said, "God bless it for you, Grethel," and took a good drink, then another hearty draught. She then returned and placed the fowls back over the fire, basted them, and turned the spit merrily. But the aroma of the roasting meat tempted Grethel, who thought, "Something might be missing. It should be tested." She touched it with her finger and exclaimed, "Ah, how delicious these fowls are! It really is a pity and a shame not to eat them immediately." She ran to the window to see if her master and the guest were coming, but she saw no one. She returned to the fowls and thought, One wing is burning. I had better cut it off and eat it. So she cut it off, ate it, and enjoyed it. When she finished, she thought, the other wing must also go. Otherwise, the master will notice something is missing. After consuming both wings, she looked for her master but did not see him. It suddenly occurred to her, who knows? Perhaps they are not coming at all and have stopped somewhere. Then she said, hey, Grethel, enjoy yourself. One fowl has been started on. Take another drink and eat it all up. When it is consumed, you will have peace. Why should God's good gifts be wasted? She then ran into the cellar again, had a large drink, and cheerfully devoured the second chicken. As soon as one of the chickens was swallowed and her master still did not come, Grethel looked at the other and said, where one is, the other should also be. Both belong together. What is right for one is right for the other. I believe if I were to have another drink, it would do no harm. She then took another hearty drink and allowed the second chicken to join the first. While she was enjoying her meal, her master arrived and shouted, hurry up, Grethel! The guest is coming right behind me. Yes, sir, I will serve soon, replied Grethel. Meanwhile, the master ensured that the table was properly set and sharpened the large knife he would use to carve the chickens on the steps. Soon after, the guest arrived, knocked politely and courteously at the house door. Grethel ran to see who was there, and upon seeing the guest, she placed her finger to her lips and said, quiet, quiet, hurry away as fast as you can. If my master catches you, it will be bad for you. He did invite you for supper, but he intends to cut off your 2 ears. Just listen to how he is sharpening the knife for that purpose. The guest heard the sharpening and hurried down the steps as quickly as possible. Grethel was not idle. She ran screaming to her master and exclaimed, you have invited a fine guest. Why, Grethel? What do you mean by that? Yes, she said. He has taken the chickens which I was just about to serve off the dish and run away with them. That's a nice trick, said her master, and lamented the loss of the fine chickens. If he had left me one, so that something remained for me to eat. He called to him to stop, but the guest pretended not to hear. Then he ran after him with the knife still in his hand, crying, just one, meaning that the guest should leave him just one chicken and not take both. The guest, however, thought no otherwise than that he was to give up one of his ears and ran as if fire were burning under him in order to take them both home with him. The Old Man and His Grandson, a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. Once there was a very old man whose eyes had grown dim, his ears had dulled, and his knees trembled. When he sat at the table, he could barely hold the spoon, often spilling broth on the tablecloth or letting it dribble from his mouth. His son and daughter-in-law were repulsed by this, so the old grandfather was finally made to sit in the corner behind the stove. They gave him his food in an earthenware bowl, and not even enough of it. He would gaze sadly towards the table, tears welling in his eyes. Once, his trembling hands couldn't grip the bowl, causing it to fall to the ground and break. The young wife scolded him, but he said nothing, only sighing. They then bought him a wooden bowl for a few pennies, from which he had to eat. One day, as they sat like this, their 4-year-old grandson began gathering small pieces of wood on the ground. "What are you doing there?" asked the father. "I'm making a little trough," replied the child, "for father and mother to eat from when I'm grown up." The man and his wife looked at each other for a moment, then began to cry. Immediately, they brought the old grandfather to the table, and from then on always allowed him to eat with them. They also said nothing if he spilled a little of anything. The Water Nix, a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, a little brother and sister were playing by a well, and while they were playing, they both fell in. There lived a water nix below who said, "Now I have you. Now you shall work hard for me," and carried them away. She gave the girl dirty, tangled flax to spin, and she had to fetch water in a bucket with a hole in it. The boy had to chop down a tree with a blunt axe, and they had nothing to eat but dumplings as hard as stones. Finally, the children became so impatient that they waited until one Sunday when the nix was at church, and then they ran away. When church was over, the nix saw that the children had escaped and chased after them with great strides. The children saw her from afar, and the girl threw a brush behind her, which formed an immense hill of bristles with thousands and thousands of spikes. The nix had to scramble over it with great difficulty, but she managed to cross. Seeing this, the boy threw a comb behind him, creating a large hill of combs with 1,000 times 1,000 teeth. The nix steadied herself on them and eventually crossed over. Then the girl threw a mirror behind her, forming a hill of mirrors so slippery that the nix could not cross it. She thought, I will quickly go home, fetch my axe, and cut through the hill of glass. However, by the time she returned and had hewn through the glass, the children had escaped to a great distance, and the water nix was forced to return to her well. The Death of the Little Hen. A fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, the little hen went with the little cock to the nut hill, and they agreed that whichever of them found a nut kernel would share it with the other. Then the hen found a large, large nut, but said nothing about it, intending to eat the kernel herself. However, the kernel was so large that she couldn't swallow it, and it got stuck in her throat, causing her to fear she might choke. She cried out, Cock, I beg you, run as fast as you can and fetch me some water, or I will choke. The little cock ran as fast as he could to the spring and said, Stream, you must give me some water. The little hen is lying on the nut hill. She swallowed a large nut and is choking. The well replied, First go to the bride and get her to give you some red silk. The little cock ran to the bride and said, Bride, you must give me some red silk. I need to give red silk to the well will give me water. And I will take the water to the little hen lying on the nut hill, who swallowed a large nut kernel and is choking. The bride replied, First go and fetch my little wreath. It's hanging on a willow branch. So the little cock ran to the willow, pulled the wreath from the branch, brought it to the bride, and received water in exchange. Then the little cock brought the water to the hen, but by the time he arrived, the hen had choked and lay there dead and motionless. The cock was so distraught that he cried aloud, and all the animals came to mourn the little hen. 6 mice built a small carriage to take her to her grave, and when it was ready, they harnessed themselves to it and the cock drove. On the way, they met the fox, who asked, Where are you going, little cock? I'm going to bury my little hen. May I join you? Yes, but sit at the back of the carriage. My little horses can't handle you at the front. So the fox sat at the back, followed by the wolf, the bear, the stag, the lion, and all the forest animals. The procession continued until they reached a stream. How will we get across? Asked the little cock. A straw lay by the stream and said, I will lay across it, and you can drive over me. But when the 6 mice reached the bridge, the straw slipped and fell into the water, taking the mice with it, and they drowned. In another predicament, a coal came and said, I'm big enough. I'll lay across and you can drive over me. The coal did so, but unfortunately touched the water, hissed, went out, and died. Seeing this, a stone took pity on the little cock, laid itself across the water, and let him pull the carriage across. However, when he reached the other side with the dead hen and tried to pull over the others sitting behind, there were too many, and the carriage rolled back into the water, drowning them all. The little cock was left alone with the dead hen, dug a grave for her, laid her in it, and made a mound on top, where he sat and mourned until he too died, and then everyone was dead.